dawn of the 20th century. This is the new technology of electricity and the automobile and the camera, and everything is kind of new and flashy and brash. And Evelyn becomes the face of this moment. And it's from there that this life that appears to be so glamorous and fancy and elegant, she's a Broadway star, it's from there that she gets pulled into the orbit of the rich and powerful,
Mhm.
and things get very dramatic.
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks To. Our guest today is Allison Pataki, and we are going to be talking about her latest book of historical fiction, It Girl, which is a USA Today bestseller and a Book Reporter Bets On selection. I love this book because it transported me back in time. Our reviewer, Rebecca Monroe, who was new to Allison's work, had this to say. Though It Girl moves at a fast, exciting pace and treats readers to endless displays of glamour and wealth, it's Pataki's breakdown of beauty, its trappings, and its possibilities that make the novel absolutely soar. And with that, welcome once again, Allison. It's so good to see you again.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here with Book Reporter.
You know, you are always musing about leading ladies, who you're going to
Yes.
write about. Like, I bet if we look on your desk right now, you've got like notes of maybe this, maybe
Yes.
that, maybe go down
Yes.
this road. So, how did you come up with the idea of Evelyn?
Yes. Oh, I love that. I keep a running list on my phone too in my notes.
Mhm.
I
I
just
love it.
added one a few minutes ago. So Evelyn Nesbit really has captivated me for decades. And it actually started in my childhood when I was growing up. My mother had these images on the wall in her bedroom of these beautiful young women with these piles of thick, luscious hair, like if you're thinking like the Gilded Age, and they'd be in these chic, sophisticated attire, dresses, and then they'd be doing these elegant things like washing their hands or riding a bicycle through a park or whatever. And these images of these young women fascinated me because it was such a blend of high and low. And women I knew didn't wear their hair or dress like that to wash their hands. And so I was so intrigued by these images. And they were the images of the Gibson girls,
Mhm.
who were the women of the early 20th century who were like the first it girls. They were the first influencers, if you will. They were the women who sold advertisements and products. And so fast forward several decades, and my mother made this offhanded comment of, oh, well, if you think that the Gibson girls were cool or intriguing, you should look into the life story of the real Gibson girl because her life was full of drama and full of tragedy. And she just gave me the broad strokes of love triangle, Stanford White, architect to the stars in built New York City as we know it, and the crime of the century. And she just gave me these few little morsels. And I was like, wait, there was a real woman who was a Gibson girl who got pulled into this crime of the century, and it was full of drama. And I was hooked. And I just wanted to know everything about Evelyn Nesbit, who was my subject matter inspiration for this book.
You know, it was such an interesting life because she started out so young. I mean, she was
Yes.
13 years old. So let's start back. She grows up, her dad passes away, her mom has to go to work. Her mom decides they're going to leave where they're living in Pittsburgh, where they're living in poverty, and
Yes.
go to work at Wanamaker's, where all her mother wants to do is become a designer or, a seamstress. And she brings this child in to work with her as well. So take it from there, which is just
Yeah.
and
Yes.
makers and knowing it's not there, like knowing all these things.
Wanamaker's, exactly. So, yes, Evelyn's story is really a rags to riches tale. And it's for that reason that she was constantly being called an American version of the Cinderella story. Because, as you said, she started from these incredibly humble origins. She referred to it as Sooty City, Pennsylvania. She was from outside of Pittsburgh. And as you said, tragedy struck her very young in life. And it was at that point when she lost her beloved father and all of her comfort and security and just their life, really their being able to sustain a life. Her mother had a complete collapse, emotional, mental, physical, in every way. And so Evelyn at the age of 13 is thrust into this position where she becomes parent and provider, caregiver, breadwinner for not only her mother, but also her younger brother. And so she shortens the hemlines of her skirts and, puts on this costume essentially to dress up like a woman twice her age and goes to work as a shop girl at Wanamaker's. And she's so intrigued by this world of elegance and the finer things in life that she doesn't have enough food. And
Hmm.
so she's working in Wanamaker's, and this artist in Philadelphia approaches her about asking Evelyn if Evelyn would sit for her as an artist's model and a muse. And it means for Evelyn the difference of getting paid $1 a day if she will sit for this artist, and she will be able to feed her family.
Hmm.
And so Evelyn reluctantly goes to work then as a model and a muse and is posing as somebody much older than in fact she is, and quickly becomes this sensational and model in Philadelphia, very in demand with the artists of the day. So she gets pulled to New York, and there in New York, she quickly becomes a sensation as well. She's quickly the most sought after model, working with Charles Dana Gibson and James Carroll Beckwith and Frederick Church and the like. From there, she becomes a newspaper and tabloid subject, and then she gets pulled to Broadway, which is a very fledgling, budding industry in New York City. This is the dawn of the 20th century. This is the new technology of electricity and the automobile and the camera, and everything is kind of new and flashy and brash. And Evelyn becomes the face of this moment. And it's from there that this life that appears to be so glamorous and fancy and elegant, she's a Broadway star, it's from there that she gets pulled into the orbit of the rich and powerful,
Hmm.
and things get very dramatic.
Very dramatic, very, very quickly. And and what she wanted to do when she was 13 was go to school.
She
Like
wanted to go, her lifelong dream was to go to college,
to go to
Vassar.
college,
Yeah.
to go to school, go to school. She watches people going to school and she
Yeah.
realizes that's never going to be her life. Her
Yeah.
brother, when she becomes kind of a kept person, she
Yes.
becomes trapped. It's when you don't have money and
Yeah.
somebody says, I will take care of you.
Yeah.
You don't often see the downside of it. You only see the upside. You see
Yeah.
that you can make more than $1 a day. You can
Yeah.
be making $10 a day. Or
Mhm.
on Broadway, you can be with other young people who don't even realize how young you are. Like
Right.
you're saying you're 18, but you're like 16 or 15.
Exactly.
And you're
Exactly.
in this world where you go out at night and it's champagne and this and that. And you
Yes.
become very vulnerable
Oh,
because
she was so vulnerable. And the power dynamics were so off balance because you're in this world where
right.
you have a beautiful young woman who has talent and appeal and star power, but no material security whatsoever. And she's
Mhm.
the provider for her mother and her family, and it all falls on her shoulders. And as you said, she's being treated as a woman
Yes.
while she is a child. The iconic image of her that Gibson drew in black and white was of Evelyn in profile, and it was her silhouette. And he framed her big, thick, beautiful, luscious hair, which was the envy of all the girls in America wanted to do their hair like Evelyn. And he framed it like a ponytail to look like a question mark around her. And he named the image Woman, the Eternal Question. This
Mm,
image went viral, to use today's terms. It became the image to typify the ideal woman of the day of the
yes.
20th century.
Yeah.
And the irony of it all is, of course, she wasn't a woman. She was a girl. And she was being put on this pedestal as this objectified image of the perfect woman. And really the sharks were circling at that point.
It's like you think of the influencers today who the
Yes.
parents make them go do this because the parents are going to benefit. And
Yes.
it's out doing things. And I was thinking of that because what her mother is living the life, La Vida Loca, because she's sitting there with this girl and wherever they are, and she's taken in. And this man says, oh, you can't live here. We have to
Yeah.
get you this, and we
Yeah.
have
Into the
to do that.
penthouse. Yes.
You're
Yes.
going to get the penthouse. And of course, your mother will come with you. And
Yes.
but what's really happening behind the scenes is this man is kind of grooming this girl
Yes.
at the same
Yes,
time.
love bombing, to
Love
use a
bombing.
term from today, grooming.
Right.
It was a really sort of subtle and implicit form of it's hero worship. Like he's courting her in the chivalrous way, really, and it's all in the direction of control and
Right.
manipulation and
Right.
exploitation. And so there's this fine line we're examining between her celebrity and her power versus the total exploitation of everything that's happening with her. And there are echoes and reverberations still to this day. And
Hmm.
we're in like right now, we're in the 100th anniversary of Marilyn Monroe. And I could not believe as I was taking in all this content about Marilyn Monroe's story, the parallels. And Evelyn was the first self-made female celebrity who was branded as the it girl. She was Marilyn Monroe. She was Britney Spears. She was, Elizabeth Taylor. She was the first of that kind, of
Hmm.
the child star that rises from nothing, becomes this huge international sensation, and the fairy tale is really a poisoned story. It's not the glamour that one would think. It's really the grit and the hardship and the exploitation and, quite frankly, like the abuse that's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
thing is, they're smart women who
Yeah.
are trying to figure out, how am I in this? And I
Yeah.
can't get out of this circled web. Every
Yeah.
single one of them, I don't know about Brittany, I'm not sure, but they try to get out of where they are. They try to get out of where they are and what they're doing. And it's just this cycle of not not taking care of yourself because
Yeah.
other people have put things in your path that you can't. There's
Yeah.
no I care about me. It's you have to care about everybody else
Survival.
around you.
It's survival. And especially because with It Girl, we're looking at the dawn of the 20th century. So we're looking at this really fascinating moment in time where we are shifting from the corseted fainting spells of the 400 and really the who's who of society being decided by who Mrs. Astor is inviting into her ballroom that can fit her 400 closest friends. And we're shifting. It's a new century. There's this new energy. It's America's century. There's all this new technology. And so you have this rising crop of young girls who are rising to the top of society for the first time, not because they are, the daughters of the Astors and the Roosevelts and the Vanderbilts, but because they are the stars on Broadway and in front of the camera, and they're selling products with advertising. They're making their own money. They're independent for the first time. And society is sort of figuring it out as we go. And Evelyn is sort of breaking new track for all of these girls as the girl, as the it girl, as the Gibson girl. And so she's figuring it out as she goes, but really it's a very vulnerable moment in time to be a beautiful young woman. It's a vulnerable thing to be a beautiful young woman nowadays, but we're talking the dawn of the 20th century. And so there were these forces at play of wealth and power and social wealth and older men, age. There were all of these imbalances that were at play.
Yeah, and I was thinking of the show The Gilded Age as I was reading this
Yes.
because this is, and you're picturing going to Mrs. Astor's party because
Yeah.
whether that show does it all correctly, you're seeing what the streets of New York were like. It was
Yeah.
dirt. There was not,
Yes.
it was dirt. There was dust
Right.
all over the place. So you're
Right.
seeing, like it's not like everything got paved by the time Evelyn came along. No,
Right.
he actually performs in one of the scenes in the book at Mrs. Astor's party. Very
Yes.
seductive, whatever, which you
Yes.
never thought Mrs. Astor would even have approved of years ago. But now that's the cool thing. So she wants
Yes.
to be part of it. So we see
Yes.
that sort of moving where she was during that time into a new direction. Because
Yeah.
years ago, she would have thought that was scandalous, but now it's for her to be cool.
Right. Right. And again, Evelyn, in that moment, is holding this crowd of Ward McAllister and the Vanderbilts and the Astors in her thrall. But again, you get this uncomfortable feeling because you're like, is she in the position of power? Or is she totally just being exploited?
Hmm.
And that's a really open-ended question. But Evelyn Nesbit, the true figure, wrote several memoirs later in life,
Yes.
after these days that you and I are talking about, after she got pulled into this murder mystery that became a crime, the crime of the century. And she talks about these moments in New York where she is thrown to the wolves. And she speaks about it with such a sort of detached and honest telling. And she describes how she has to just leave her body in order to tell us what exactly happened. She has to disassociate
Hmm.
because all of these moments that happened, she was such a pawn in the playing of all the powerful people around her. And so it was endlessly fascinating to hear her voice. And that was what I wanted to preserve was I wanted to put her in the position of storyteller, narrator, on center stage where we're hearing her version because
Yeah.
so often we hear the newspaper versions or the versions of the men. And I wanted to lift up her voice.
Yeah, and it's like she did know what was going on. She was
Yeah.
reading between the lines at a very young age of what was happening. And I was also, okay, when did Broadway become Broadway? Because I'm not a big Broadway person, I have to admit. I don't go to a lot of plays, I don't do, but when did Broadway, like, are we celebrating a big anniversary? I would totally have missed this, I'll be honest.
No, you're totally right. So when we are in the days that we are in for It Girl is the brand new, we watch them celebrate New Year's Eve, clicking over into the 1900s to the new century and the new year. And that was really the dawn of the Great White Way because you had the streets of New York City being lit up for the first time, these theaters coming online with these stunning sets and beautiful lights. And the girls who were dancing on Broadway were known as the chorus girls dancing in the footlights because
Mhm.
it was the first time that you were having this illumination where New York City was becoming the city that never sleeps. So really we're there with Evelyn in the earliest days of Broadway. You know, the end of the 19th century and then the 20th century was going to become the moment where New York City became the centerpiece of automobiles taking over from horse-drawn carriages, Broadway lighting up the night, cameras taking over for the old kind of fusty oil paintings where only the wealthy people could commission artists to come and paint them and they'd sit for hours and they'd have one painting. Now you have photography which can put out, multiple images in the time that it would take for someone to sit and pose for an oil painting. So it was really she was in this liminal space of transitions and she typified that.
It was like a go, go, go time. What I also thought was as was there was the opera, the Philharmonic,
Yes.
nightclubs, and
Yeah.
and then Broadway comes on. And it's like
Yeah.
about at that time. And
Yeah.
what's really interesting too is people would go to the shows more than once. Like you wouldn't
Yeah.
just go
Yeah.
see, now everybody goes see is Hamilton. Maybe they see it a second time. These people would go 40 times. I've been to
Yeah.
see your show. I've been to,
Yeah.
it was like we were going to a club or something
Yeah. Well,
like
because you're not sitting at home streaming Netflix.
that.
What's entertainment? You're going to go out, you're going to go to Broadway. And for the people that we're talking about in It Girl, money was not an object. And so if they were investors in a show, they would just have these seats and they could go for like a dinner and a show. And so Evelyn, coming from Pittsburgh, was so taken in by this world. And she was taken in not only by the splendor of the stage and what it meant to be a showgirl, she was the first like iconic showgirl, but also what it meant to be in this sorority of girls backstage.
Yeah.
And this was the first time in years that Evelyn described having friends
Mhm.
because from the time of her father's death, as a young girl, she got yanked from school, she got sent to work. And so then when she lands in Broadway, she's with girls her own age again. And there's a poignant scene where they're all saying, no one ends up here backstage or on the stage um, at this moment in time because life turned out the way they expected it to. If
True.
life had turned out the way they expected to, all these girls would still be in school,
Hmm.
they'd be in high
Hmm.
school,
Yeah.
not even college, maybe university. But the life of a showgirl is not a straightforward path for them in this moment. These are working girls. These are girls who are having to pay the bills by dancing and singing and performing night after night, day after day. So she can relate to these girls and they kind of take her in because she's the youngest in their sorority. And so she really enjoyed this moment in time before the bad men got involved.
Yeah.
And when you're a showgirl, there are the stage door Johnnies, the champagne Charlies, and then there are the benefactors and
Hmm.
the investors who want to have these beautiful young starlets as their, quote unquote girlfriends.
Hmm.
Um, and they come saying that they will be the protectors and the benefactors. And then the negotiations of what exactly that relationship, and I use the word relationship in quotes, entails obviously was different in each case, but there were gross power imbalances that were happening. And it's, tale as old as time.
It's like a business transaction, but they don't
Yes.
realize it's a business transaction at the time. It's one step up from being like, in the whorehouse, but it's
It is, right?
more, but all these girls go out after the show. She's going out. Her mother's like, what are you doing? Like, are these the right things to do? But her mother's also on this gravy train. I mean,
Yeah,
her
the
mother,
selective outrage. There's selective outrage on the part of her mother, right? And there's
oh, I
sort
love that line, selected outrage. Yeah.
yeah, in and out of sort of parenting and sort of laissez-faire, hands off.
Yeah. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
wait, we have this really nice suite and we have to be nice to Stanley because even that we're not going to get to keep the suite. And wait, we're going to do what and go with whom and why? And
Yeah,
it's just very, very interesting because it's each of these men are power hungry in different ways. And
right.
they one is kind of came from it. The other one made it, if I'm correct.
Yes.
One
Yes,
of them
exactly.
was always from the money, and the other one, Stanley made himself by being this architect, but also bringing her to these buildings and saying, "I built this. I
Yes.
built that."
My kingdom.
I gave
Hmm.
a talk recently in Westfield, New Jersey, and they said when somebody, a realtor came up to me and said, when someone put their home on the market, he said to her, "You have to come over. I have to tell you the story. This was one of the houses that Stanley built, and this is one of the things, and it gives this house some pedigree."
It
And
does.
so it was interesting for her when I was giving a talk about your book because she was saying, "Wow, you just didn't see all the pieces coming together because this was in New Jersey. This was not in New York City. It's like where they had spread out to." And then they get on the plane and they go to Europe, and I'm going to go for the summer. And Evelyn's still in the penthouse, like what, waiting? It's
Yeah.
very,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Stanford White, who's the inspiration for this, character in this book, built the Washington Square Arch. He built a lot of Columbia campus, the Plaza Hotel, the Waldorf Astoria. He worked on all of the iconic sites that we know today with the New York City footprint. And he was known as the Pharaoh of Fifth Avenue. And so what happens is Evelyn is the belle of the ball. She's known as the prettiest peach from Pittsburgh. She's known as America's Cinderella, America's Eve. And so the men all want to be with her. And they're basically going to war with each other over winning her time and her attention. And so she gets pulled into their power struggles
right.
and she becomes sort of the crown jewel that each of them is trying to possess and get to. And so she wrote about that very candidly. And the way that she wrote about it informed how I found her voice in the story. And this is stories told from her perspective.
Mhm.
But yes, I rarely write about women who are happily married, who find a good guy and have the fairy tale ending. Because you know what? That wouldn't be the compelling arc, the
Right.
growth, the character's evolution, and the journey. This is a journey full of hardship for Evelyn, and she is a survivor in addition to being an artist and a woman. And
Mhm.
so she really evolves a lot. We see her grow up, we see her learn things the extremely, extremely hard way, and we see her surviving and rising above constantly.
And also trying to come to terms with what's going on. Because when a situation happens, it's not just it happened to her. It's like, well, what did happen and how do I feel about that?
Yeah.
Because some women just let things happen. She's constantly doing this pullback of, wait a second, how am I really feeling about this? How do I
Yeah.
really feel about Stanley's feelings about the whole thing? And at the beginning, she's swept up in it because
Yes,
it's
she has.
so fresh and it's so new. And then you
Mhm.
start to realize, wait a second, he's going to Europe. And she has that whole scene before he leaves because she's just
True.
your little book, like your little book of who? Where am I in the little book? Am I
That was a
wrong enough?
true story. And so for a time she thought they were in love, and for a time she thought they were in this relationship, and then she finds his book and she finds where her name is in the book, the order. And she was really heartbroken, and that was really a moment of the scales falling off of her eyes. And
Mhm.
that then kind of sets her on the next phase of her character trajectory. And it's a learned skill that she has to acquire to ask herself how she feels, to your point.
Yeah.
Because at first, she finds that to be a very futile exercise.
Mhm.
What does it matter how I feel? I have to do this. I don't have a choice. My family depends on me. My life depends on this. For a long time, she's not even able to ask herself how she feels about things. And so that's a huge part of her growth is her being able to figure out how to have her own agency
Mhm.
and to choreograph her own dance. And
Mhm.
she didn't learn how to do that until the very end of this story.
No, and it's, and as the people are going along, they're young. They're seeing everybody else. What does every other woman have? Like, let's just say these girls are all friends, but they're
Yeah.
also all jealous of, wait, who were you with? Which man are you with? What are you getting as far as presents are concerned? Where are
Mhm.
you being taken? I mean, come on, this is like young people. This is
Mhm.
not mature people that are sitting there going, wait, you're being taken for a ride over here. And no
Yeah.
one's telling her that because they
No.
just think she's lucky. So
Yeah.
and then we've
Exactly.
got her young brother, who he actually puts in a school,
Yes.
make sure he is taken care of as well, which
Yeah.
is a very big thing for she and her mother. But then something unfortunate happens, and you see how that would have been true in that
Right.
particular time, that it's all
Exactly.
not this gilded, fabulous world. There's an
Right.
undercurrent of other things
Yes.
happening.
Exactly. And she, slowly the pieces of her support network are kind of chipped away. And that's a huge piece of the dynamic is to kind of isolate your quarry, isolate your prey, and remove the brother, bring her closer, put her up in a space that you're paying the bills on, you're paying for the food, you're paying for the clothing, the car, everything. It's to sort of take away the agency and the ability
There's
to,
that dramatic where they come in and he says, you are moving today. You
yeah,
don't need to take these things. We have new things waiting for you. And you figure whole closets have been built and, just go out and get whatever she needs and whatever she wants. And that's what we're going
yeah,
to do. A
yeah,
moment of owning people that way it's so
yeah.
interesting. And it scores where, because when I was working in a magazine, everything was about models. And now it is not about models. It is about celebrity. And we have
Mhm.
gone from people being groomed to look great on the cover of a book, the magazine, to be who is gorgeous with a following that will get people to buy them. It's so we're seeing like that went from the showgirl to the celebrity to the model to the like the instant person.
Yeah,
And what's
influencer. Yeah.
sensational? What's
Yes, exactly.
sensation
What's
right now
sensational?
is all over the place. It,
Yes.
and we are,
I was so interested with Evelyn in going behind the scenes because I think whenever we build someone up,
mhm,
whether a movie star, celebrity, influencer, what have you, we all want to just know the true story behind the scenes.
right.
When the cameras stop rolling, when the curtain closes, this person is a human being who feels things, who loves people, who has setbacks and failures. And that's why we're interested in reading the tell-all memoir or watching the expose documentary or watching the reality TV show or watching their Instagram because we want access to what's true behind the scenes. And she was really at the dawn of feeding that craze and that interest. This is the dawn of mass media. This is the dawn of the tabloids and the society pages where they're writing about who Evelyn's stepping out with. Where is she going to dine? Where is she spending her time? Who is she with? What is she wearing? How is she wearing her hair? She
Right.
was kind of the first who ignited that interest in, as you said, this celebrity culture.
Yeah, and it's like who is dressing her? Like
Yes.
and you realize these are just mannequins that people are putting clothes on and saying, okay, watch the beginning of the Oscars. Are they going for outrageous? Are they going for this? What is
Mhm.
this at this particular time in their career? What do they need to do? What kind of jewels do they need to wear? So they will get stopped and photographed and looked at. I was looking at Demi
Yes.
Moore and this like, crazy outfit she's wearing, blah, blah, blah. And you're
Yeah.
like, Debbie Moore's had like this whole different life, being on Landman, being like
Yeah.
all these different things that she's doing now. But you realize that she's not a young actress. But
Yes,
what
yes. Just looks like she's aging in reverse. But
exactly?
Evelyn,
Because there was
Evelyn,
not surgery back then.
oh, right. I know. Well, and Evelyn really was a young actress, but she said that the truly effective artist model and muse had the ability to be an auto hypnotist.
Mhm.
And she described why she could be so effective. Because everybody always referred to her as haunting. Everybody always described her eyes as being these haunting she had huge big brown eyes. And everybody always described how they could get lost in her eyes or they could just be so taken in by her image. And she described how she could make herself completely blank. She could make herself into this empty vessel where she would go into almost a trance.
Mhm.
And the beholder could then ascribe any meaning onto her that they wished to.
Hmm.
And that gave the beholder power and fantasy and options. And it's not that different than the Mona Lisa. What is it that makes someone so intriguing or captivating that they become almost mythological in status?
Hmm.
And I think a huge piece of that was that she could just sort of empty herself, disassociate, and then people had the power to see in her whatever they wanted. So she could become Helen of Troy, she could become Cleopatra, she could become Salome, she could become this femme fatale. And she was constantly being cast in this role of the femme fatale.
Hmm.
And then her real life imitates art such that she is put in the middle of this crime of the century where she is called the lethal beauty. She is
Hmm.
called the cause of it all with an uppercase C. That's her nickname. And she becomes cast in that role and in that story again in real
Right.
life.
And she ends up having to go back to Pittsburgh. She ends up having to go back to the
Yeah.
the whole story of Hal and Stanley and what happens with everybody is just so intriguing. I was really surprised that she had written two books because she
Yes.
longs for education. And the fact that she did that, I found was so like, I'm going to go back and talk about my life because I don't know if there are not people that are objective enough to look
Right.
back on their days and say, this is what happened to me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that at her time was a
Yeah.
very big deal to be able to do.
Yes, she must have felt such a powerful and compelling need to have her story heard because Evelyn Nesbit describes how in the moment that the crime of the century happened, this murder mystery that played out on the rooftop of Madison Square Garden for all of the who's who of society to witness, she described how at that moment her voice ceased to be her own. It became the property of the newspapers. She ceased to be a person, she became a story. And it became such a huge international scandal that she was pulled into against her will that President Teddy Roosevelt had to ask the papers to stop writing about her, to give her a break. It was on the level of like the way the paparazzi would hunt Princess Diana or
Hmm.
Marilyn Monroe.
Hmm.
This was the international scandal. And she describes how she lost her personhood in that moment and she lost her voice and she didn't regain it, arguably, for decades. And what I wanted to do with It Girl was give her back her personhood, give her back her voice and her agency so we can hear her voice.
Yeah. And see what she was actually understanding that she was going through. You know,
Yes.
so far, has there been one time period that you've enjoyed writing about the most?
Oh, I loved this one. I loved being in New York City. I loved obviously watching the Gilded Age, but we're a few years after the Gilded
Yeah,
Age here.
the
We're
years
like
after.
coming into the roaring 20s.
Yeah.
We're in the moment in between. And so I loved being in this period. I felt like it was a moment that was a bit dangerous because everything was so new and
Mhm.
everything was being discovered and invented. And there was this mentality of like out with the old century, in with the new, and this is going to be America's century, and anything is possible. And America had money and entertainment and personalities, and you're barreling towards World War One, and sort of everybody kind of feels and thinks of themselves as immortal in this moment, and sort of the sky's the limit for us. And so then you see humans reckoning with their own flaws and their own, where they take it too far and it becomes a bit unwieldy. And I found it to be such a fascinating time period and just sort of the zeitgeist of the personalities at the time.
And then it like goes to war, and then we pick it up in the Roaring Twenties in a totally
Yeah.
different way.
Yes.
It's a little bit more gauche during that time than it
Yeah.
was, first time out. First time out,
Yes,
new and
exactly.
shiny, and then it
Yeah.
gets a little tarnished as like time goes on.
Exactly, exactly. And that's a good metaphor for Evelyn's story too, and the trajectory of her fairy tale.
Right, 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 right. Okay, so you're raising three girls. I love that
I
you're
am.
raising three
Yes,
girls
three
at the
girls, girl
same
mom.
time as you're growing your career. So you're growing the girls and growing the career. Because
Yeah,
I remember when there were like two little girls and there was like three
I
little girls,
know.
and it's
I
like a whole
know.
stories. I mean,
I knew
growing
you
up,
when there was one little girl.
one
I
little
met you when
girl,
there was one little girl.
one little
Yes.
girl, one little girl. I
Yeah.
remember I was at a party and I was like, oh my gosh, if I was only at her life, if I only had her arms, you know what I mean?
Oh,
It was
goodness.
like, oh my gosh. I was reading in her bio. I was like, oh, maybe it's because she does yoga. Maybe that's
Oh, well, yoga keeps me sane while I'm on book tour, that's for sure.
she's in her room
Plane,
doing
different flight every day.
she's doing a downward dog in every
Yeah.
hotel room, you know? So what's your day structured like to get all the pieces to fit together? Like we know you're doing something with your child before this. And
Yes.
like How do you
So
write in the day? Do you write 4 o'clock in the morning? I couldn't read.
yeah, a little bit of yes to all of it. So as you know, my day before this was I was at a farm holding baby goats with a bunch of 4-year-old children because I was at my daughter's pre-K field trip to go to see some baby goats at the farm. But I'm not always at a goat farm. That was a typical, I couldn't say no to that one because my daughter really wanted me to go. But typically, and as you know, as a mom, there's no such thing as a typical day because as soon as you sit down for a typical day, you get the call, oh, your kid just got sick all over gym class. You need to come pick them up. Or, oh, there's no school today, or there's a snow day, whatever it is. But if I catch lightning in a bottle and it is a quote unquote typical day, I have my 3 kids go off to school and they get there and I sit down, pour myself a nice strong cup of coffee. I light one of my many writing candles. I put on my music, classical music with no words. And that's like my Pavlovian response. I'm like a dog. I'm like, okay, I got my candle, my coffee, and my music. It's time to sit down and write. And so I'm a morning person. So I really get my most productive creative work done in the morning. So yes, sometimes that means getting up at like 4:45 or 5 and stealing a few hours before everybody awakes, then getting them to school, then doing a big section more after they've gotten to school before lunchtime. But the problem with getting up at like 5 to put in a couple hours of work is that the only thing worse than getting up at 5 in the cold and the dark to write before everyone wakes up is getting up in the cold and the dark and then them also waking up. And so then you're just parenting for 2 extra hours in the cold and the dark. You're not even getting your writing done. So
No,
I have to be very careful about that because they seem to have a sixth sense where they're like, oh, mom's up. Time to get up. Mom, hello. And then their little feet out of bed and there's no writing. So, but yes, I'm a morning person
okay.
and take a little break, lunchtime, maybe use the afternoon to get some emails or some admin or some other writer life, stuff done. And then I got the girls at about 3 and I have an amazing nanny and my husband is super hands-on. So we kind of tag team the afternoon. Like
Right.
yesterday afternoon, for example, one had a doctor's appointment, one had softball practice here, the other had softball practice there. So we needed to figure out how to be in 3 places at one time.
Mhm.
So there was no writing happening yesterday. But every day is kind of different and it's just like a game of whack-a-mole. And I find that I can be more productive actually when I have less time because I have to squeeze in my writing hours.
Mhm.
If I'm really, really in a story where I'm obsessed with this woman and I'm writing my next book, it's what I want to be doing. It's what,
Mhm.
so I steal the moments when I can. And I'm keenly aware of the fact that this is one season where my little ones are little and
Mhm.
I see how quickly it's going and I know it's not going to last forever. So
Mhm.
I'm really just trying my best to sort of be present in all of it. And
Mhm.
it's hard, obviously. It's challenging, but it's what every working parent has to negotiate.
Yeah, it's just like what you do. My son, my younger son said he's always picked on baseball teams. And I said, Corey, like, are you really good? Because I have like a no reference point on this at all. And he goes, Mom, let's get real. Dad will assistant coach, and you sit in the crowd and talk to moms about books. He goes, we're like, it's got nothing to do with my talent.
They
He
just
goes, it's
want the
got to do
package. They want the whole package.
so I would run home from New York, like race home from the office to come
Oh,
home to sit in the
yeah,
bed. And then I'd be talking about, oh, such and such a book, because there's a
exactly.
lot of downtime in those stands. There's a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of downtime in the
Oh,
softball.
yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
there was a lot of like, oh, let me send that note for myself to do later,
Yep.
I
Yep.
love that.
I'm usually helping out to coach. And so there's no downtime. But this year, I don't think I'm going to. And I was just thinking, I might be able to get some audiobooks logged with all that downtime, because you usually drop the kid off for like the pregame warm up about
Yeah.
45 minutes before the game. And I'm like, if I'm not running that practice, I'm going to just do some of my audiobook.
That's how I listened to your book. I listened
Yeah.
to your book because I really wanted to try something different because I've read everything that you've written. So I said,
Yeah.
let me try and do this. And I really enjoyed it. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about is Barrie Kreinik voices the
Yeah.
audiobook.
Yes.
And I went back and looked that she'd done this is the third book of yours that she's done.
Exactly.
And did you know immediately, like when you're writing, do you hear Barry's voice narrating this at all in your head as you're doing it? Or does that
Um,
come later?
do you know, I hear the voices in such a way that like I'm in the scenes and I write the scenes. I don't hear the voices as how they're going to come out, for example, in an audiobook. So yes, I hear the voices, but no, not in an auditory way. More just like I know it's time to start writing when I start hearing the voices and I start to hear the pieces of the dialogue. I start to see the scenes. The woman that I'm reading about on the page in the biography or the like primary sources begins to just take me by the hand and sort of talk to me as a woman who's going to be a character in the book. And I know it's at that point that I'm ready to put the research aside and begin writing.
Yeah,
So no, I don't hear the audiobook in my head, but I love Barrie Kreinik and I'm hearing such wonderful things from everyone
right.
who's done it as an audiobook. And I'm kind of new as a reader. I'm new to the audiobook game and I'm getting really into it.
Well, the nice thing is, if you have 15 minutes to go to the gym or 20 minutes to get to the gym
Yeah.
and back, that's 40
Yeah.
minutes of
Yeah.
listening to an audiobook. And you
Yeah.
can come in, if you're going to make a quick breakfast, you're still listening. So you're
Mhm.
getting a lot more time in of being able to. I mean, friends say, I did listen to a book while they were gardening, and there was like this wild sex scene, and I'm like running up on the deck going, what do they think is happening in my backyard over here? Something like that. But which for because I never can find the headphones that you're supposed.
That's so funny.
I
Yeah.
never can find whatever I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
having like with me, or they,
Yeah.
they run out of battery or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
just really nice because you get in the car and you feel like you're doing something
Yes.
instead of I'm just going to listen to music.
Wasted time. I agree. I totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
on book tour because I had so many flights. Or
right.
if I was downtime in the airport waiting for a flight or taking a car to the airport, then I would just be able to listen to audiobooks.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much you can get accomplished in a very short point of time. And we do this Bookachino live event every second Wednesday of the month. We're doing it tomorrow, and we preview books with our readers. Your book previewed extremely well. Everybody wanted to read the book.
Thank you.
And what was really interesting is we're sitting there, and I said to you, "How many listen?" And I said, "What speed do you listen to on?" And I said, because somebody said to me two times, and they go, "No, 1.2. 1.2 is the secret speed." And I was like, "Oh, that's very interesting." So you learn from the readers as well about, okay, and so many are listening to audio now. It's
Yeah.
popping up in such a bigger way. There are authors that I know that their audio sales week one were bigger than their print sales.
Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah. And the audio narrators have their own followings and
Yes. Yes. Like what's
mhm.
Barry got out this week? What is she doing? Blah, blah, blah. So
Yep.
right now, Taylor Swift is our it girl.
She's the it girl. She's the life of a showgirl.
Life
Yes.
of a showgirl. So it's any way to get a
So
book to her?
I'm just putting the vibes out that I really think Taylor would love this
Yes.
because it's a Pennsylvania story. This Evelyn rose from a modest small town in Pennsylvania. She came to New York, followed a similar trajectory to superstardom, worked hard. Everything she got for herself. She worked hard. And some of the lyrics, like, I paid my dues with every bruise. I took her pearls of wisdom and I hung them from my neck. Like Evelyn could have, her soul could also be writing words like
Right.
this.
Right.
Yes.
And her
Mhm.
every move is followed. She may be
Every
dating
move
a
is
guy who might be
followed.
the wrong guy, but everybody's following her. And when you
Yeah.
break up, everyone knows. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's sort of
But
like,
Taylor Swift is like the corrective version of Evelyn's showgirl story because Taylor Swift took back the keys to her kingdom. She got back her original IP. She put the father figures in their place. And that's what I wanted Evelyn to have the chance to do on behalf of all the women who have been the showgirls and the entertainers who have been exploited by the men. And as a mother of three girls, I was so excited to talk about female agency and female empowerment, female friendship, and female girl bosses.
and
You're not just a showgirl, you're a boss.
and taking care of the people around you and
Yes.
having that opportunity to finally be able to take care of her mother. And
Yes.
for Taylor, it's taking for everybody on her tour. It's $100,000 to the trucks. It's this, that, the
Taylor
other.
Swift is like the case study of what a girl boss can and should be.
Yeah. It's like giving
Female
back.
empowerment.
I'm
Yeah.
giving back at food banks where I am. I'm giving back to this at
Oh,
the
yeah.
other. It's
Just such a healthy example for girls and boys everywhere.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, going forward on like what's going on. I think it's really, really interesting.
Yes.
Was the title always It Girl?
The title for this one was always It Girl, and that has not been the case for all my
Oh,
books.
it hasn't.
Finding Margaret Fuller, it took us some time to land on it. Marjorie Post, it took us some time, but It Girl, I had from the beginning just because she was the It Girl. And I have to show you this one, Carol. A reader
Oh,
bedazzled my
oh,
book for me
love it.
and brought this to the event that we had with Theodore's on Long Island.
I love
And
it.
The book club was called She's All Booked Up, and she brought this bedazzled, and I
I
just
love
love
it.
the cover. Yeah.
I tell you, okay, so publishers, remember how I used to do the speckled edges? Now you know how to bedazzling covers from here on in. That'll be
Yeah.
the thing. And
Yes,
it
I love it.
started with It Girl. It started
Yeah, and
with It
it
Girl.
gave me major points with my daughters for me to have a bedazzled book cover.
Oh my. Wait till they get to read your book someday. I mean,
I
wait
know
till
this one will be a while. They're
now
allowed to
listen,
read children's books. Nellie Takes New York and Poppy Takes Paris, but they're not reading It Girl anytime soon.
but you figure though, give it 10 years, give it 15 years,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
because this one
reading.
gets a little dark. This one gets a little dark. This was a little darker than my other books.
What you're saying, they're thinking, not even just this, Marjorie Post, thinking about
Yeah.
all of what you've written, and for them to have those to go take a look at, like, look what mom did, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Anna Quinlan said a beautiful thing at an event. I was at an event with her in New York City last month with Zibby Owens, and Anna Quinlan said, "When I am gone, my children will have a bookshelf full of opportunities to open to any page and hear my voice." And that
Oh,
that was a really precious gift that she was leaving for her children.
oh, that's lovely.
I was
That's
very moved by that.
very, very lovely. Was the cover the first one you saw, or did you play around with the cover?
We played around with some of the nuances of the color and some of the specifics of the dress, but this is not like a typical historical cover. If you think about Evelyn's world and some of the interior spaces she was in and some of the moments she was in, you might think like dark, lush red,
Hmm.
velvet,
Hmm.
crimson,
Hmm.
the colors of sort of her world. Victorian, it was dark. We were like, we are going to go with showgirl energy. This could be like a Madonna set, or this could be, going to prom, pop culture, a Bravo TV
Yeah.
show. And what we're playing with here is that she was the first of that kind. And this is kind of like reality TV before it started. We're going into her world, we're entering into her reality.
Yeah.
And we wanted it to have some pop and some sparkle because the story has some glamour and it has some sparkle.
And that's some jewelry,
It
beautiful
has a
jewelry,
lot of jewelry. It
a
has
lot
a
of
lot of
jewelry.
jewelry.
Jewelry is
Yeah.
being delivered all the time. I'm like, whoa,
Oh,
more
yes.
than that. Oh,
Oh, yes.
want to see that piece. Okay, so you dedicate this book to Charlotte. Who's
Yeah.
Charlotte? Who's Charlotte?
Charlotte is one of my oldest girlfriends, and this is a story where a lot of it hinges on female friendships and
Hmm.
going through life with girls and with the sisterhood that's going to support you, your chosen family. And so Charlotte is like one of my dearest friends from childhood, from the age of 7. We've raised our children together, and I say we've been through many acts
Yes.
because we have. She's in my chorus line of the inner circle of my life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's perfect with the book. It's like it's got to be somebody that's got some depth to the whole your whole
Yeah.
life because I love the ending of this book. I loved like where she goes to survive, what she
Thank you.
does to take herself to another place. And you think about she was young and
She
she
was young.
didn't die young, so she created a whole other world for herself as time went on, which was pretty amazing given, you sort of have this tainted life in a lot of ways and to overcome that.
Yeah. Well, we all need inspiring stories where we can be immersed and transported and where we can escape into fantasy, into a different world. And Evelyn's story, really, I hope for people is they'll learn a thing or two about the moment, the era, the events that happened in history. But also, I just want them to be entertained and transported and immersed and hopefully inspired. And I just want this to be a story experience where we get to see a strong woman evolving, growing, and rising, overcoming.
And but it also has the like a little bit of the malevolence of a thriller. And it's
Yeah.
different
Oh,
from your
good.
books.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
different from your other books in that
It
way of
is.
what's
It
going to
really
end
is.
up happening.
It
He's
is.
walking around with a gun. What's going to happen with that gun?
Yeah.
It's that, go, go, go kind of a thing. Go,
Yes.
go.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark psychology in here that, of course, we're talking a century ago. They didn't have the language or the words that we have, but there's a lot of, you can see like, the mental illness. And as you said, the gun, and there's violence, and there's a lot of psychological warfare.
Yeah. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So do
Mhm.
you know what's next? Because you always have a palette of leading ladies you're
I
thinking.
do. I know what's next, and we're still in the 20th century. It's an American woman. We're coming forward a little bit to like mid-century.
Uh-huh.
I'm so excited to share very soon. and I can share very soon. And I guarantee you, everyone knows her name. Everyone knows her name. But I would venture to guess that very few know the full extent of her legacy and how they impacted all of us.
And they don't know her whole story. And just like Marjorie Post, we knew that
Exactly. It's very reminiscent of a Marjorie Post footprint. It's not serial though. But if you find me on like my website or on social media, I'm going to announce there very soon, and that'll be the first place.
that'll be the first place we see. And I tell you, I really enjoy your social media.
Oh,
As I told you a couple of weeks ago for our listeners, I put together a from beginning to end, the anatomy of a book. I called it Anatomy of a Book. And I picked Allison's book. And I started from the day the deal was announced to the day the book hit the USA Today bestseller list. And
thank
it
you.
was so much fun because what she had was so much on her social media that I went to find what the story was going to be. And you pluck things. And if you go back and look, if you've got a favorite author, go back and look over the months. It's there. I mean, look, if you don't do Instagram stories, which just make me crazy because
Right,
they go
right.
away in like 24 hours, like nothing.
Yes, exactly.
A
Yeah.
lot of work goes into these things. If you
Yeah.
have it there and you're sitting there and hearing what's going on, it's amazing because you actually can see the anatomy of the book coming
The
together.
anatomy,
See
the
the
anatomy of the book, and the anatomy of a book is so aptly named for this book in particular because her body was this object of warfare. It was like she was like the Helen of Troy who, like launched this war. But I'm so honored that you picked It Girl as your book for the anatomy of a book.
so much fun. But when I get this idea, like because I rather have to give a talk, and what am I
Yeah.
going to talk about? And I was like, I'll do
Right.
anatomy of a book. I think I've got the book. And it was because you had so many details. I mean, I was screenshotting to beat the band the night before this one, putting everything together because, and then one more thing, we just got to do this. You're packing these dresses to
Yes.
wear on your travel because I don't think people realize how hard travel is.
Oh,
And when you rolled that up in a ball, I was like, oh my gosh, that is
and these
great.
these dresses can actually do that. Yes. You don't even, I mean, it's the amount of like mental work that has to go into thinking, okay, I have to have a dress. I have to have, shoes that are comfortable to stand for 45 minutes to an hour, but also kind of match the outfit and just getting this all on the road. I want to do carry on because flights are tight. You're landing, you're going to an event. You don't know what's going to happen with your flight, with the car, travel, weather, whatnot, whatever's happening in the world. And I'm leaving home. I'm making sure they're all set at home, but then I've also got to get myself ready to go out on the road. And yeah, so I found these amazing dresses by Jude Connolly, who's a designer and I love them and they're colorful and they make me happy and they fit so well and they're comfortable, but I can roll them up and throw them into a suitcase. And
Right.
so they're like my uniform for
Yeah.
any book event, Jude Connolly.
But you can't wear the same thing every day. Like
I
you've
know
got
because
to
of
get
social media. Because of
photographed every day. Either that or you just put on the one dress and you go the whole time. But
People will comment if you wear the same thing because of social media. But I have also gotten into this strange thing that my readers know, and it's now a thing with my readers. I see you too. I dress to match my book cover,
that's
which
exactly.
I don't know when and how this started, but now it's like whatever my book cover looks like, people expect me to show up wearing that color, and they show up wearing that color. So I want to, I want to keep this going.
Well, do you know what's really funny is I do this because a lot of times the authors don't have the book with them. So I have
Yeah,
the book behind me so I
I know.
can like, tie into this is what I'm doing,
I love it.
like
I
really
love it
funny.
so
Well,
much.
such a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I loved hearing the background and we'll do this again because I think we're
I love it.
times.
Thank you. Thank you to all of your readers and thank you for having me back. And just, as you and I were saying, like it all comes down to just the fact that people have to keep reading our books and that way we can keep writing them.
That's exactly. And keep buying them. Buy
Yeah.
this. You get this at the library, you buy it and give it to a friend as a gift. That's
Thank
what
you.
our philosophy right now is. That's what we want people to be doing. You love it. Make sure you get the way to share it.
Books make great gifts,
They're,
right?
they're
There's nothing better than a personalized book.
they're easy to wrap. Let's get real.
They're easy to wrap and they are thoughtful. You put some thought into how you chose this book for this person you love.
Exactly. So
Yes.
with that in mind, everybody, thank you, Allison. To everybody, we look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks to.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol.